Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. It's as promised in our daily financial news this morning. We have a surprise guest and actually a student or a mentee of Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you.
Do me a favor, when you talk to Greg, I'll talk to him tomorrow. Tell him thank you for setting this up. Ben, what are you doing in this crazy world of real estate? Where are you at? Just give us a quick bio and we'll get into your story.
I own United Properties in North Carolina. I am out of Greensboro. United Properties is an investment firm, but also a real estate firm. So I buy and flip houses, do a little bit of wholesaling, but I also have four agents that work for my firm.
Very, very cool. And when did you bump into Greg the first time?
Well, I heard Greg on a podcast, and there was a couple of things about Greg that kind of that kind of set with me. One thing was he said his place here on earth was to help people, and that was what he enjoyed doing the most. And you can tell that from the relationship that you have with Greg. I mean, he's very willing to do whatever it takes to help another person. The other thing, Greg was spent some time in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and it's one of my favorite places. So that kind of, there's a little bit of commonality there between Greg and I. And
that's
so
awesome.
And so it's a funny story with Greg. I reached out via email. It was one of those things early on where I was told, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody. And I did, and wow, Greg responded.
Isn't that great? Yeah, you just never know, right? Instagram, web pages, whatever. Yeah, Greg's a wonderful human being. I did the same thing. I bumped into Greg via a podcast I heard probably let's say 2 years ago. Might even be a little more. And his first interview, much like this one, is like, this is my story. And I remember him telling me about the truck in the toolbox and how he was an entrepreneur and how he served in the military and high school graduate, gone on to do amazing things. So Greg is a true asset to the channel. He is my Monday expert. And pretty cool. Well, that's enough about Greg. Greg, you're awesome. I'll talk to you tomorrow. But let's talk about Ben. So talk about your company, Ben. What have you been doing? When did you find it? When did you jump into real estate?
Yeah, so, previously I was an auctioneer. I owned a small eBay business, finding my way. In the area that I live in order to be successful as an auctioneer, you essentially have to be an old timer.
Yes.
These guys have built their business over many, many years. And so there was a bit of a struggle there. But Thanksgiving of 2018, I listened to a lot of inspirational stuff anyway, but I was on the way, I was on a long road trip, and I was scrolling through YouTube, and I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad. How cliche. Free on YouTube, about 6-hour book. Had about a 6.5-hour drive. Listened to the whole thing, all the way through.
That's awesome.
And something about that book, different from what Greg heard in that book. Greg
and I have talked about that so many times. He wants to be Rich Dad. I'm happy being Robert and Kim. It's amazing. Yeah.
I was just shocked at the thought that, if you want a new car, you go out and find an asset to pay for that car. I was like, wow, what a concept, So, but from that point, in 2019, I read 52 real estate books.
Wow.
So one a week. And then, and every podcast that I could get a hold of. So it was sometime during all that I reached out to Greg. And Greg is about action.
Oh yeah, definitely.
but I believe we all do things in our own time. There's the analysis paralysis thing, and there's a bit of fear to jumping into a flip or any of this stuff. But so in February 2020, I had put a logo on my truck and created this little company of mine. And one of my neighbors, who I didn't know, actually reached out. About that time, I'd also gotten my real estate license. So, and I said, I can certainly help you guys sell your home, but I'd like to buy your home. And it went from there. That's a long, tumultuous process. we originally had a deal, and there's hard money lenders, and was
Mhm.
able to come up with a little bit of cash. Um, and honestly, Greg saved that deal for me.
Really?
Greg
Yeah.
and my local lawyer turned that into a subject to deal,
Okay.
which I didn't believe was even possible. And and that deal had its up and downs, but it was very profitable.
Oh, very cool.
I took the profits from that deal, and I put it all back in the business, and created this firm, and it's kind of gone from there.
Very cool. Well, let's talk about why that deal had to go subject to. Was that because the sellers had no equity, because of title issues? What made that deal have to go subject to back in early 2020?
Well, you'll recognize early 2020 as COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Just thinking
So
that February. Yeah.
we went from bringing 15 or $20,000 to the table to the day before our closing statement read $60,000 is what the lender felt
Ah,
comfortable. So that changed things.
gotcha.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and and doing a subject to deal for the first time is pretty intimidating. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
who's going to let you take over their mortgage? In fact, I had an attorney last week tell me there was no such thing, as transferring a deed. Um,
That's funny.
and but so there are attorneys out there that don't believe it's possible, but yeah. So Greg and my personal attorney made me believe that was possible.
Mhm.
Offered an incentive to the seller, and they went for it, and it worked out great.
That's awesome. So again, subject to is what I would call an advanced strategy. Certainly not what I would want to try the first time.
Mhm.
But when you have mentors like Greg and a lawyer that will help you through, that is awesome. So that obviously worked out for the seller, worked out for you, and then you really rolled that profit into the business, and now you have 4 agents working for you.
Right.
So let's actually go back to so now let's go back to 20. What was 2021 like? That 12-month period, right? So we're in the throes of COVID, but you're building a business. How many deals? What do what happened in 2021?
Well, 2021 is the firm started and I I do a non-traditional advertising. I'm actually on ABC and CBS.
Oh, wow.
I'm doing commercials, and that was something that Greg, along with a few other people, made me believe was possible through some negotiation
Mhm.
and some practice. And I'm still not the greatest at those, but I'm getting better, and so you know 2021 was just a growing year. My second deal in 2020 was
Oh,
another subject too.
wow.
And it was actually came right off the Facebook page. But
Nice.
I knew at that point that, I had to get down to the nitty gritty and do some real advertising. And as you know, direct mail is extremely competitive.
Yeah.
I'm touching on a little bit of that right now. Um, in fact, I'm out of town on business, and I did 750 mailers last night, which is very,
Woo.
very small, and pulling the trigger on that was interesting. But so I knew I had to find an advertising strategy that was, set me apart
Mhm.
um, from some of the other firms and some of the other investors, because my market is extremely competitive. And
Yeah.
that's when I found television.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So, what is it? Not necessarily what it takes from a money perspective. What does it take to produce a TV commercial? I have no idea.
Well, it's interesting. Some of the stations will send a crew out as part of their package, and they'll
Interesting.
work with you.
Interesting.
And it was one of those things where I've learned um, from my experience, when you're humble and ask for help, people help you. And
Oh,
so
totally.
that was my approach. Is the salesperson, I essentially
Mhm.
told her, I'll give this a shot, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Um,
Awesome. So,
you
just
know,
a couple more questions. I think this is fun. I've never known
yeah.
anybody. Well, actually, I think there's one other guest I had that did some spots. But so when you sign up for this, they help you produce it. Do you actually produce multiple commercials, or is it one commercial just at different time slots, or how does that all work out?
I did a couple of commercials. So my
Awesome.
firm has that strategy where we'll list your property,
Mhm.
or I'll give you a cash offer, and we do both. So I actually tell people which a lot of investors are scared to do. I
Yeah.
will actually tell you what your house is worth
Yeah.
on the retail market, and I'm happy to list it. Some folks just like the cash easy close,
Yeah.
and I think that's going to become more popular. I was just looking at interest rates, and you're so big, you talk about that a lot on your
Oh, I
show,
do. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think it's going to become more and more popular as the market possibly slows down a little bit.
I think there's no question it's going to slow down. I think it has a busy Q1. A lot of people coming off the sidelines want to rush before rates go even higher. But yeah, this year is going to be the year of slowdown, probably a falling number of transactions. But for a guy like you who's creative, and I refer to you as a real estate entrepreneur, basically, you're trying to get in front of as many owners as possible, owners, and I'm using that word specifically, because when you get in front of owners, you can find sellers. And then when you're in front of sellers, you can give them options. That's what my Tuesday guest Omar does every time in the Inland Empire or the High Desert, excuse me. It's an awesome strategy. So your job is to get in front of as many owners as possible. You're using TV spots to do it, which makes sense because you don't want to get in front of renters. They're not owners. You're trying to get in front of owners. I think that's genius.
Well, one thing, Michael, that, ran the statistics this morning, we're still, at 156 new listings over the last month in my market and 274 homes closed. So we're still at a deficit there, as far as inventory. So, but, like you and Greg talk about that 5-6% interest rate, that number is approaching. Back in the 80s, people didn't shy away from 20 or 18 or whatever it was. And so I'm curious to see what will happen as that goes on, but one thing about television, I just hired a full-time virtual assistant. I'm going to start producing some of my own stuff.
Wow. So, very cool.
Yeah. So that I can have it's tough when you have a crew come out and they're filming 3 commercials that day for multiple clients. There's a lot of pressure.
Right. I can only imagine.
So it gives me a little bit more leeway as far as that goes.
So is it fair to say that TV spots are working for you in the company? Is that a fair answer?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that one of the nationwide companies kind of has one in every slot that I do. So it has turned a little bit competitive, but yeah, I mean, the first few months were very slow, and I think that's the case with any new advertising. But it's fair to say that I'll continue with that advertising source.
Sure. I think that's something I hope people heard, because it's the same thing with direct mail or dialers or website. You have to be consistent. Too many people get into this game. And again, I used to sell software for a living, and it's the same deal. You have to be consistent. You have to set up your funnel, your touch points, and be consistent. Don't get all upset because you're 2 weeks in, dropped, I don't know, pick a number, $5,000 and don't have a deal yet. That's not how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was great that I had that blessing of that early deal that was able to, rocket me forward there and allow me to invest some money in that advertising and not be so worried, and watching every penny. So
very cool. So in 2021, you got rough numbers, like how many flips, how many wholesales you did or sales? You have rough transactions?
I'm a high margin guy. So, it's so funny. I was listening to another podcast this week, and this gentleman, he did 68 wholesale deals and he made $91,000.
That sounds like a lot of work to me.
It does me too. So I made $91,000, on a couple of flips that year. And did, I think I touched 5 properties and I think we had 30 retail transactions. So for the first year, I mean, I was very proud of what we did.
I think that is I hope people heard that as well, because there are so many, I'll just call it, social media celebrates transactions, 91 transactions or whatever, 68 or whatever it was. Dude, I could already hear it. 68 transactions.
Yeah.
Oh, $91,000. Dude, that's not even $1,500 a deal. I mean, that's
right.
That is no, thank you. I have no interest in that. Much rather be high profit. And again, I think that changes going forward. I think skinny deals can get done in a hot market. They're not going to get done in a market that's flat or, heaven forbid, down. It's just not going to happen. High margin is going to be the only way to go.
Well, it's the size, and it's also the size. It's not necessarily a $91,000 and a $1,500 profit, but when you have such big operations, and I just didn't have that. My first year, it was my sister and my broker in charge, they've both been a blessing. and I've added agents since then. But so I was such a small operation with very little cost, that my profit margins just, I've hired an acquisitions manager since then. I'm growing,
Mhm.
but I'm careful, about growing those expenses,
That's awesome.
especially, contracts with those expenses. It's very important that
Yeah.
if something happens like 2008, that I can get out of, some of these things that I've,
That's awesome.
decided to.
Well, I got to ask you about 2022. Can you believe we are already 1 month into 2022? What's on deck for the rest of the year?
Well, we're working on a huge deal now, that could pay our expenses for the year. So I'm so excited.
Nice.
Got 3 under contract right now. I made 11 offers over the last couple of weeks.
That's
So
awesome.
I mean, like I said, I'm not a huge firm as of yet, but we continue to grow, in a steady fashion, and it's things like our CRM, and then I've got a new data program that I'm working with, and managing some data. Um, and where I live, and I noticed you posted something about a big mega site out in Ohio. I believe that's coming. We've actually got a mega site coming to Greensboro that's even larger than the one in Ohio,
Oh,
which
wow. That's
that
awesome.
they've bought 1,800 acres. They're clearing 1,000.
Oh, wow.
I'm very close with, the economic, the president. Well, I'm very close with some of the folks in the area that have pushed that project forward. And so, I'm using that as a tool to bring in business for myself.
That's a great idea. One of the things on another channel that I'm on every week, Dion from Dion Talk, we talk about insider trading being legal. And
Right.
what we mean by that in real estate being legal is go learn the president or the whatever VP of
Yeah.
economic
Right.
this or that. They'll tell you what's coming. It's on the wall. Look, 1,800 acres.
Yeah.
So and so is going to do that.
Sure.
They're going to build a manufacturing plant, a fab, whatever it is.
Right.
Insider information is legal in real estate. You just got to network. You got to grow. Be a nice person. Help when others ask. It's really that simple sometimes. Would you agree?
I do. It's funny. What does Greg say? Pay for lunch.
Yeah.
So we're a member of a couple of networking groups, and we attend those weekly. But obviously, just one-on-one time with people, and
Yeah.
just reach out and ask for stuff. I've got a big map that I had printed on my wall of this site. I don't know how many people actually have gotten hold of that map, but all I did was ask.
Yeah.
Um,
It's pretty amazing.
and so you have to know the right questions, but just a little details. It's
Sure.
Toyota, and Panasonic. It's a battery plant.
There you go.
And so it's 1,750 employees directly from Toyota and Panasonic. But then, all the other businesses that support that, it's going to be big.
That's awesome.
And we have an Amazon center, that's about a mile from my office, that we think is going to pop up. So
That's amazing.
we're growing where I live.
Yeah, it's great. So if somebody wanted to, because a lot of investors watch my channel, obviously watch Greg's channel. If they wanted to reach out to potentially invest in that area, how would you want them to reach out?
Yeah, I'll give my email. It's
Sure.
Ben, at unitedpropertiesnc.com.
But-
And my website is unitedpropertiesnc.com.
Folks, and make sure you put the NC on that. I actually sent out the first invitation without it. It doesn't actually get to Ben if you don't
No.
actually have the NC or North Carolina on the end of that. Any closing thoughts, Ben, for folks to get them excited, make sure they do the work, network, all of that? What are your closing thoughts?
Coaching's so important. I know that it seems like a lot of money, but Greg has paid his fees over and over and over again. Plus, he's been a blessing and an inspiration. So, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask people for help.
Yeah, folks, if you don't know already, Greg Dickerson has a playlist on this channel, all his own, 2 years of material. I'm sure it's 200 hours or more. Go check it out. Go back to his very first video, Truck in a Toolbox. It is amazing. It is one of the conversations in my second book, 15 Conversations with Millionaires. He is a wonderful human being. And Greg, I'll talk to you tomorrow, buddy. Ben, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Michael.
All right.